Hello and welcome to Oasis of Grace. I hope that you are doing wonderful and peace be unto you. So, right off the heels of the importance of listening to the Holy Spirit and obedience to the Holy Spirit, today's video is talking about the fact that we live in a time whereby we have to be firm and stern about following the dictates of the Holy Spirit and not care about people's feelings. Not because we do not love our fellow mankind or we do not care in the literal sense, but because sometimes there's just no time to explain everything to everyone. So for this, we're going to have a look at the life of Jesus, who lived a very stern, straightforward, spiritually disciplined, and spiritually obedient life. From the beginning of his life in Matthew 2 all the way to his death, Jesus gives us a clear template to follow with regards to human relations. He gives us and exposes through his entire life and his entire existence as a human being. He shows us that what life will be like when you are a child of God. He shows us that this is how human relations are going to be like when you are a child of God, because you are going to have an edge about you. You are just going to have a thing about you. You are going to have the Spirit of the living God within you, which will definitely repel, irritate, and upset every hidden demon, each and every minor satanic, evil, demonic entity that is hidden either in people and in the air, in nature, in animals. You are just going to upset every manner and form of evil on the face of this earth. And what I love about the example of Jesus is that he exposes human relations, because human relations are the physical being's main source of influence and main sphere of influence. So Jesus really played a very crucial role, not only pertaining to salvation, the forgiveness of sins, him being the lamb, all of those aspects of his existence in the physical form are important, but also studying this chapter of spiritual hygiene and just receiving revelation from the Holy Spirit has showed me how shockingly Jesus has been teaching us about human relations, and he has been showing us and exposing the narcissistic spirit which has captured people. And it's crazy that it hasn't only captured people in our time and age, but in his time when he lived. Can you imagine? But anyway, the narcissistic spirit has just been there since the beginning of time. So let us then have a closer look at human relations from the lens and the life of Jesus. So in Matthew 2, when he was still a baby, a newborn baby, there had been news that there is a king. There had been a prophecy that there's a king who is going to be a king above all kings and who's going to take away the sins of the earth, which made the earthly king of the time, King Herod, upset. But because he was a liar and he was pretentious and partial, just like Satan, the father of lies, he said one thing and meant another. So he said to the wise men, "Tell me where he is. I'd also like to see him and welcome him as the new king." But later on we learned that he just wanted to kill him. And this shows us the nature of human relations, and it shows us that the worldly titles of people, the worldly standards of respect, they do not count when you are a child of God. The only thing that will matter as a child of God is to listen to the Holy Spirit and to listen to the Spirit of God. If God tells you to stop talking to someone, stop. You need to listen because your life depends on it. If God tells you to not honor someone or not respect someone or not listen to the instructions and do what they are telling you, if God is telling you that this person is conceited. Everything they are doing is out of selfish conceit. Everything they are doing is because they are trying to take the glory of God, or they are trying to take God's credit. Do not lean on your own understanding out of honoring mankind, out of honoring mere mortals, out of keeping up with the standards of the world, because that will be your very downfall. So we learn from the very moment he showed his face on this earth about human relations. And as I mentioned in the previous video, just imagine the caliber of respect that a king has, even in this day. But back then, it was even more majestic and just sovereign. But because the Lord said to Joseph, do not go there, and Joseph listened. Joseph did not consider that, oh, this is a king. Who wouldn't want to receive an invite from the king? It's such an honor that out of all the children that are born in this day and age, he has chosen us. He has chosen our son to welcome in his chambers and to have his gracious hand upon us. You know, Joseph wasn't like that. And I love how God always uses people that are humble, people that are very much detached from the praise of the world, from the standards of the world. You know, Joseph was a very laid back man. He was just a very mind my own business kind of man, nonchalant, very chilled bro. And because of that, he was able to submit to the leadership of the Holy Spirit. And such is the humility that God requires in order for him to successfully carry out his will. As we learned from the Garden of Eden, the will of God isn't always done. We are a much needed requirement in facilitating and in participating towards the fulfillment of the will of God. However, when we are operating in ignorance and when we are operating in just gullibility and whatever, when we are not yielding to the Holy Spirit, then we work against ourselves and we end up being the reason why the will of God, the perfect will of God, is not fulfilled. So we later then go on to Matthew 10, Matthew 11, Matthew 12, whereby Jesus is now going into communities and doing all these miracles, giving them parables, teaching his disciples. In Matthew 11, verse 18 and 19, Jesus says, while teaching John's disciples, he says, for John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. In verse 19, he says, the Son of Man himself came eating and drinking, and they say he is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is proved right by her deeds. Oh, I love this verse so much. I love how Jesus just kept on having these comparative examples, real life examples of how a narcissistic person operates and how the narcissistic spirit operates versus how being a child of God means and what it means. For example, in verse 18 and 19, we see that Jesus is showing us this aspect of, I'm just going to put it in the most well understood way. You know, when you deal with people that just don't like you and hate you, there's absolutely nothing that is right that you could do and satisfy them. You could give them $1 million, it's not going to be enough. You could kiss the ground they walk on, it would never be enough. So Jesus is showing how people that do not have the Spirit of God within them, they are never satisfied. They're always looking for something wrong. You could be doing something right, they're gonna hate it. You could be doing something which is, well, not entirely wrong, but a different way, they are not going to be satisfied. They're just never satisfied with anything. And this is seen a lot with people that have a narcissistic spirit. They're never satisfied. It is impossible. Those of you who know and have dealt with narcissists, it is impossible to satisfy a narcissist. And what I love is that in Proverbs, it's actually written that it is impossible to honor a fool. You cannot give honor to a fool. And this speaks also to the worldly systems, the systems that are run by Satan, the systems that are run by these disembodied beings and the people that they've captured as containers. Those systems are set up such that God's children don't prosper. Those systems, remember in some of the previous videos, I spoke about how Satan has set up the systems of the world to be counterproductive. Even if you may be doing things right, even if you may be meeting all their criterias, there will always be something wrong. You will never be enough. That's because the main energy or the main spirit is the spirit of rejection, which is the spirit of Satan. So Jesus here is just exposing this template that we must use to screen people in our lives. You need to be wary of people who are never satisfied, people who ask for something and when they get it they complain, people who always have negative things to say. Those people are operating under the spirit of rejection, and you will just wear yourself thin. You will wear yourself out trying to please them. And what I love at the end of verse 19, he says, but wisdom is proved right by her deeds. This is another principle, a human relation principle that Jesus showed us. Because a person can say something but do another thing. A person can, give you a good gesture or be kind to you, seemingly kind. But ultimately, it is the deeds that are going to confirm the original intention. That is why it is written that by their fruits you will know them. And that is why God warns us that we must not put our trust in man, because people are ever changing. A person will say one thing right now and then go ahead and do another. Just like Herod. He said he wants to bless the newborn king, the baby. But then, all in all, we see that he wanted to kill him. To such an extent that as soon as he died, God spoke to Joseph and said, okay, it's safe to go. The man that wanted to kill Jesus is dead. So can you imagine the level of danger that we put ourselves in when we do not yield to the Holy Spirit? Can you just stop for a moment and think about the detriment you would be causing yourself by not listening to the Holy Spirit, by holding on a higher esteem worldly standards versus the instruction of the Holy Spirit. And what I like is that throughout the entire life of Jesus, he is just exposing, like he's blowing off all the lids of human relations and exposing those that are not true children of God, exposing how they are and exposing exactly what we need to take note of so that we will not be misled. And I just find it crazy how theology as well as religion has conveniently narrated the life of Jesus in a surface level kind of way, in a way that is very arm's lengthy, such that everything that we read, it seems far-fetched from us and highly unlikely for us and inapplicable for our lives. as I'm doing this lesson, I'm just going into Google because I'm really trying to draw from an authentic place of what does theology and religion teach us about Jesus. And when you think about it, like from childhood, those of you who grew up in Christian homes and communities, you will remember that the whole narrative is that he was just kind, loving. He was, turning the other cheek. He was just, they are revealing this side of him that is very allowing, very yielding, submissive, and then ultimately beat up, crucified. And that is the price of being a child of God. Okay. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, you know what? God is so good, because even when they may intend to leave out important information, even when the foundational areas of our lives, such as churches and family, may just be apathetic and indifferent and surface level to the things of God, it doesn't matter, because Jesus did not leave us alone on this earth. He left us with the Holy Spirit, and at the right time, the Holy Spirit reveals to us everything we need to know. So the life of Jesus was just a ministry that was meant to help us understand human relations, because our understanding of human relations will protect our spiritual hygiene and will ensure that we get to live out God's perfect will for our lives and fulfill our purpose, and as a result live out our destiny. But because religion and just theology, the narrative, the language in use, everything that has just been filtered down to the masses, it has been selectively and conveniently picked so that we are given the truth, but not all of it. But blessed be the name of the Lord, because we have the Spirit of truth, who is the Holy Spirit, who is the God of our dispensation, the Lord of our dispensation. So Jesus shows us from a very early on chapters in the New Testament all of the traits, the character traits that we need to look out for when we are relating to people that claim to be children of God, and just people in general, on a human to human relation. So in Matthew 12, we learn from that synagogue visit whereby the Pharisees were asking Jesus if it's lawful to heal on the Sabbath. So them asking Jesus if it's lawful to heal on the Sabbath, I want us to take note of verse 10 in particular. When they asked him, you would be under the impression that they are trying to do the honorable thing, the best thing, the respected thing, the right thing to do, which is something that we hear a lot in society. We hear this a lot in families, in churches. There's just a deep-seated conditioning of doing things the right way according to whose standards? Mostly it's according to the standards of the world. And we see the same thing here in Matthew 12 verse 10 when they are asking if it is lawful to heal on Sabbath. Although in verse 10 they didn't say in the literal sense, is it the right thing to heal on Sabbath? But the very question, you may be deceived, that they are asking because they are trying to do the honorable thing. They're trying to do the right thing by keeping the law, and they're just so cautious to do God's will. And I want you to see carefully how compromised people operate. I want you to understand how narcissistic individuals operate. There's nothing that they do which is sincere. There's nothing that they suggest out of goodness and kindness and honor, which is literally that. So later on then, Jesus heals the man because there was a man who had a hand that was shriveled. Okay, so in verse 13, then Jesus said to the man, stretch out your hand. So he stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other. Look at verse 14. Come here. Everyone, come look at this. Look at verse 14. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Well, wait a minute. What happened? What do we have here? Aren't these the men that were guarding honor, guarding the right thing, guarding, just doing things the right way? Aren't these the same men that were being careful to do the right thing? Are they not the same people who were asking about what is lawful and whatever? But here in verse 14, immediately they went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Do you see what we are dealing with here? Do you see what we are dealing with? This is exactly the demonic possession that people have in them when they are compromised, when common sense is not in the group chat, and when logic and reasoning is not in the group chat. Their true nature, the true nature of the spirit that resides in them will show up, because Proverbs tells us that Satan is a ravening wolf. So a ravening wolf can only keep up its pretense, can only put on the mask for a couple of seconds. But if you don't give the ravening wolf the submission it wants, it will just rip off the mask and just attack. And this is exactly what we are seeing here. So if they really cared about doing the right thing, if they were true children of God, well, why aren't they happy that the man is healed? Why is it so innately tormenting for them that the man is healed? To such an extent that they just went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. So you see what I mean? When you are being forced beyond your willpower, when you are being manipulated and blackmailed and made to feel guilty, when you are burdened with guilt to do the right thing, you need to ask yourself, Father, whose spirit is this? Because God would never command of you to do something that will lead you to detriment. God would never command of you to do the right thing based on the standards of the world. But if we do not ask of the Lord, if we do not test the Spirit according to 1 John 4 verse 1, if we are not careful, to whose instruction do we listen to? Then we may end up falling for the plot of the enemy. So whenever you are being pushed beyond your will, whenever you are being forced to conform and obey man's laws, conventional importance, and all these things that are put in place on this earth above the knowledge of God, then you need to know that you are probably not on the right path. Just to give you a practical example, so I had an altercation with this other person who was just being so forceful towards me. Like, ever since I met this human being, they were forceful to know me. They were just overly forceful in such a way that I knew that this person is not a good person. Fast forward a couple of interactions, he then started to be generous, unsolicited gestures of kindness. And remember, Proverbs tells us that the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. So don't think that people who are showing kindness to you and who are being sweet, they mean it. The tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. Satan does not do anything for free. Everything that he does, he is forcing himself in to access you. He is forcing himself to have direct influence on you. So whatever you may accept, the gifts, the whatever, you must just know that it's a trap. Anyway, so I started to tell this person, listen, stop. I appreciate the thoughts, I appreciate the gestures, but I'm not interested. Do not do it. Do not even bother yourself. And he just kept on insisting and doing things beyond the point of me saying no. And then what happened was, I started to push back violently, not in the physical violence sense, but in the sense of just like shutting them down according to how it's outlined in the Bible. And guess what? He immediately showed his true colors. He ripped off that mask of kindness. He ripped off that politeness that he was putting on as a facade, and he started to attack me and just show me a side that I knew was there, a side that I could see from the first day. And guess what? I know for sure that on my side it was success, because the enemy got defeated. I did not allow that human relational opportunity for influence and for access, because my spirit rejected that person from the onset. And they kept on now wanting attention, wanting and demanding glory, demanding credit for things that had nothing to do with them, for things that had to do with God. Like, have you ever like done something, and then like when you do something that is between you and God, and you know what you told God about, and then someone else will come and demand glory. Okay, let me just make a practical example for everyone. Let's say you are job seeking and you pray to God and say, Lord, may you please prosper my job prospects and help me to land a job. And then you give God precisely the kind of job you'd like to have and all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden, when you get the job, you now have this manager who is demanding glory, who will remind you each and every day that you got this job because of me. I'm the one that approved you. You know, that kind of spirit, that kind of satanic, needy for validation, needy for praise, needy for worship kind of thing. That's exactly what happened with this person. And I was just like, you know what? And ultimately, the whole idea and the whole thing behind spiritual warfare is warfare against God's power. The life of Jesus also shows us this aspect. The Pharisees hated Jesus because they were claiming to be God's children, but they were operating in the lack of God's power. So Jesus, now being on earth, doing these miracles, changing people's lives, was shaming them and was exposing their true nature. And instead of them humbling themselves and saying, okay, God, please help us to do it right, help us to walk in your will the right way, no, they wanted credit for everything Jesus did, and they wanted Jesus to be part of their religious power train so that he could do all the things that he was doing, and then they would take the credit and glory. So that is the spirit that we are dealing with on the face of this earth. And through the life of Jesus, we are learning the nature, the true nature of compromised individuals and compromised people. And so we have come to a time where we absolutely cannot afford to respect people as much as we'd like to. If the Lord tells you to block someone, you need to absolutely block them with immediate effect. If the Lord tells you go somewhere, you need to run in that direction as fast as you can. We have come to a point that we absolutely need to yield to the Holy Spirit as if our lives depend on it, because our lives do depend on it. Thank you so much for tuning in on today's lesson. I hope I wasn't going too fast. I just got ahead of myself with excitement and just everything. But yeah, I really pray that you reconsider and audit the relationships you have, the people that have access to you, and your spheres of influence. Just take everything to the Lord. Ask the Holy Spirit to guide you, to help you filter, to help you make the right choices and tread carefully around people. Okay, I will see you on the next one. Stay blessed. Bye.